over the results of the Turner Syndrome Anxiety Project, which was a collaboration between Turner Syndrome Colorado and the Extraordinary Kids Clinic and Research Team. The Turner Syndrome Anxiety Project started with a request from the community for more research. We know that anxiety is common in the general population, and many people with Turner Syndrome also experience anxiety. We wanted to know, how is anxiety experienced by people with Turner Syndrome, and what are some of the barriers and facilitators to care? And to answer this, we had 135 caregivers and individuals with Turner Syndrome respond to our survey. And we then interviewed 5 parents and 5 young people with Turner Syndrome about their experience with anxiety. We learned about many of the challenges with anxiety for people with Turner Syndrome, but it's also important to note that there isn't just bad news. We learned that some early intervention is possible and some evidence-based strategy for anxiety can work. We want to thank everyone who participated in this project and present 10 things we learned through our research. First, anxiety in Turner Syndrome is like an iceberg. Some symptoms are visible, like refusal or shutting down, yelling, tantrums, shyness, avoidance, fidgeting, persistent questions, and perfectionism. These are behaviors some people are familiar with Turner's may notice. However, many symptoms are invisible. A teenager with Turner Syndrome told us, "I just feel like it's a million thoughts running through my head." And a parent of a teen with Turner Syndrome said, "Anxiety is definitely the hardest part of all her medical issues that we've had to deal with." Anxiety can be triggered by health problems and medical procedures that go along with having Turner Syndrome, like blood draws, daily shots, surgeries, and cardiac problems. A parent of a teen with Turner Syndrome told us that her daughter has a big fear of shots and anything medical, so when we go to the endocrinologist, that's a big deal. A young adult with Turner Syndrome told us, "I'm always anxious about it. Is my heart okay?" We heard many reports of sleeping problems related to anxiety. Trouble sleeping started at a really young age, and many said problems continued into adulthood. Over 70% of respondents reported insomnia as a symptom of anxiety. This is important because we know sleep has a large impact on overall health. A parent of a teen of Turner Syndrome told us about her experience putting her child to sleep when she was younger. Nighttimes were just a nightmare, lots of screaming and crying. It would get to the point where she would start pulling out her hair, scratching me, hitting me, just having a meltdown any time we said it was time for bed. A teenager with Turner Syndrome told us, "I can't sleep because my brain is going a million miles an hour, and that's frequently about things that are anxiety related." We also heard about anxiety due to otherness or feeling different and needing special supports due to Turner Syndrome. We heard things like having a rare genetic condition, looking different from peers and family, receiving special supports at school, or being a different type of learner. Seeing and interacting with the world differently, and differences in fertility options led to feelings of isolation and anxiety. An adult with Turner Syndrome told us, "There are some physical features that are slightly different from me than some others. Like I have more kind of squinty eyes in my family." A parent of a child with Turner Syndrome talked about their child's experience at school, saying, "She has classroom accommodations, and I think sometimes she's resistant to access those because it may look or feel different, and that can cause anxiety." We also heard that making friends and interacting with others caused anxiety. Almost 60% of our survey respondents with Turner Syndrome said new friendships are likely to trigger anxiety, and over 80% reported that dealing with the conflict is likely to trigger their anxiety. An adult with Turner Syndrome told us, "I'm not always the best with social situations. Like, am I doing this right? Or should I be doing something else, you know?" And a parent of a teen with Turner Syndrome told us, her fear of rejection has kept her from being the one to reach out and schedule things with friends. We also know that triggers for anxiety can change with age, while others are persistent across the lifespan. Things like noisy and bright settings and transitions were specific to early childhood. Doctor's appointments and medical issues started with early childhood and continued through school age. And school age years also brought up unresolved issues, dealing with conflict and lots of things happening at once. It wasn't until adolescence that we heard a lot of recalling negative experiences and managing expectations as triggers for anxiety. Uncertainty, new settings, and anticipation were triggers frequently reported across all the different ages. An adult with Turner syndrome told us, my anxiety might have also shifted to different things like thinking about the future instead of tests. I think new anxieties come up as you get older. This was similar for symptoms of anxiety. Some changed with age, others were persistent. Things like crying and tantrums, hyperactivity, and zoning out were common in early childhood. Fidgeting, clinging, and body tension all started in the school-age years, and some continued on while others dropped off. Looping thoughts didn't really start until adolescence, but that continued on to adulthood. And then negative thoughts were really just reported from our adult participants. Avoiding facial change and insomnia were persistent from early childhood through adulthood. A parent of a teen with Turner syndrome told us, the behavior, especially when they're younger, we don't recognize as anxiety. We see meltdowns or trouble adjusting when things don't go right, or perfectionism. We also saw that anxiety impacts the whole family. We saw that anxiety is usually triggered at school or work. However, symptoms of anxiety are expressed mostly at home, where the family provides support. We don't see all the ways that families accommodate anxiety at home every single day. We heard stories about lengthy bedtime routines, co-sleeping, homeschooling, finding a therapist, coordinating medical care, rearranging the house to avoid triggers, taking time off work, and generally preparing kids and teens for whatever caused their anxiety. A parent of a teenager with Turner syndrome told us, our family is to the point where, I hate to say it, but we all know when we have to walk on eggshells around her. We also heard a lot about barriers for people with Turner syndrome wanting to get care for their anxiety. We heard that not everyone is aware of the potential connection between Turner syndrome and anxiety. Early signs of anxiety are missed or misinterpreted as something else, so treatment is rarely offered and there's a lack of mental health resources. All of these barriers create a cycle that makes it more difficult for individuals with Turner syndrome to get care for their anxiety. A parent of a teenager with Turner syndrome recalled their experience from when their child was first diagnosed. I don't remember doctors asking me about her being anxious. It was all more about height and heart and kidneys and thyroid. We want to end by stressing that there is hope. We learned that evidence-based treatment for anxiety can help some people with Turner's. Early intervention can work. All the caregivers of our young children with Turner syndrome in our survey who had tried therapy or daily medication reported that they found it helpful. But at the same time, it's never too late. The majority of adult survey respondents who had tried therapy or daily medication reported it was helpful. We want to thank everyone who participated in this project. Your participation in the study will lead to more research and better interventions for the Turner syndrome community going forward. We'd like to thank our funders. This project was supported by the NIH and NCATS Colorado CTSA grant.